ignition system start. T minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. We have liftoff of Enterprise and her crew. Enterprise, you have cleared the tower. Enterprise, go for throttle up. Engines increasing to 104%. All positions prepare for booster separation in 30 seconds. Cool cats. Hi. I didn't know you were there. You snuck up on me. Oh my goodness. I was just trying to help launch this space shuttle. Since you're here, how about I teach you about my most favorite thing? Space. Let's go.
Oh, cool cats. Space. I've told you all year long that I wanted to teach you about space because it is one of my most favorite topics out there, next to cats, of course. But I'm going to give you a crash course in space. So, what is space? Well, to understand what space is, you really have to start by thinking about the planet Earth, where we live. Earth is a gigantic sphere that is orbiting the sun, and it's also rotating on an axis so that we experience day and night. Okay, so a planet like Earth is part of the solar system. If you look on the screen, you can see the solar system. It starts with that big yellow ball of burning gases called the sun. And the sun is really a star, but it's at the center of our solar system. After the sun, you've got the planets Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, the planet that's kind of a planet, kind of not. They keep changing their mind in the science world. Okay, do you see where Earth is on the screen? Okay, right here. We have some planetary neighbors Venus and Mars. Okay. Now, the thing about these planets in our solar system is the ones that are closest to the sun, like Mercury, very hot. Venus is actually hotter than Mercury. That's kind of complicated to explain, but both of those planets are much hotter as far as their temperatures go than here on Earth. All of the planets that come after Earth, like Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, are very cold planets. They're too cold for us to go and live there. Earth is perfect. Earth has the water that we need, it has the oxygen that we breathe. It's the perfect temperature for us to survive. Okay, so our planet is Earth. It's part of the solar system that has these other planets going around the sun. Now, let's think a little bigger. If we back out just a bit, our solar system is part of a galaxy. Now, I know you Star Wars fans have probably heard about something happening in a galaxy far, far away. Well, the Milky Way galaxy is where we live. And if you look at this picture, you see this little spot down here, and this little spot over here, and this little spot over here. Those are solar systems that are part of the Milky Way galaxy. And if you look at all of the other little dots that are bright out there, those are different solar systems that have their own sun with their own planets. Our solar system, we're just one of those. So there's lots of solar systems in our galaxy called the Milky Way. Now let's think a little bit bigger. Back on out. If we think about the whole universe, that's everything that exists out there. Look at this picture. All of these little spots that you see are galaxies. And in each galaxy are several Solar systems that have suns at the center of them with planets that orbit. Now, that's a lot of really big thinking. So, now let's bring it back into Earth. In the universe, we live in the Milky Way galaxy. That's where our solar system is, and our planet is part of that solar system. Okay? Hope that makes a little bit of sense. The next question: where does space begin? This is something that a lot of grown-ups don't even know the answer to. So let me try to explain. Right here, I have a diagram. Now, if you look at the bottom, you got a picture down here of the Earth. And the Earth is surrounded with layers of air. That's called our atmosphere. So you've got this layer, the troposphere. Then you've got this layer, the stratosphere. Then there's the mesosphere and the thermosphere and the exosphere. Well, according to science, when you travel 62 miles straight up into the air, you end up finding yourself in space. Now, there's kind of a technical thing about this. There's this line called the Kármán line, and whenever you cross that line, that's when you are officially in space. And the reason that line is there is just to help people understand that you can fly airplanes below that line, but regular airplanes that people can fly on to go on vacation and trips, those won't fly any higher than that level. Once you get beyond that level, you have to have special kinds of spacecraft or aircraft to be able to fly because the air is very, very thin. So, where does space begin? 62 miles straight up in the air. Are there people in space? Kids ask me this question a lot, and I have to tell you that yes, there are people in space right now. There is something called ISS. That stands for the International Space Station. You can see a picture right here of the space station. Now, this huge thing is circling the Earth right now. It goes around the Earth many times a day, and sometimes you can actually see it in the night sky. You can find a tracker online that will tell you when it's going to be flying over your nighttime sky. We were able to see it last summer, and it took about 6 minutes for it to cross the sky over our house, and it was really very easy to spot on a clear night. But if you look at this picture, the space station itself is this part here in the center. Okay, you see these things that are kind of like tubes. Okay, they look small here, but they're actually pretty big. That's where the people are. They have to fly on a rocket to get to space, but once the rocket docks with, or the capsule docks with the space station, they're able to go inside and they can live there sometimes for a year or a year and a half or even longer. Now, these big things that you see right here that are in the shape of rectangles, these are for collecting solar energy to provide power for the space station because they don't have electricity up there like we have here on Earth. Now, the moon does not have people right now, but people have been to the moon. In fact, the United States of America was the first country and the only country to actually put people on the moon, and that was quite a while ago. So, this picture shows you our beautiful moon in the night sky, and you can see one of our first astronauts who went and walked on the moon, and they actually put an American flag down in the dirt. And you know what? It is still there today. People who have really strong telescopes are able to see the flag on the moon, which is pretty cool. Planet Mars. There's no people on our neighbor planet yet. But guess what, cool cats? Everybody who is working in space right now, like working as their job to study space and space travel, they're trying to figure out how to get people to Mars and how to get people to start living on Mars. You might be one of the first astronauts when you grow up that gets to go to Mars and live. How cool is that? So, how do people travel to space? Well, it's a long story, so I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. Back in 1958, this is like when my parents were little kids. NASA was formed, and NASA stands for the National Aeronautics and Space Administration. This is a government agency in the United States that works on space travel and being able to go to the moon, to go to the space station. And they work with other countries and their governments to make sure that everybody's doing things a certain way and they all agree on how to share space, things like that. You will see here the two logos for NASA. Down at the bottom, you see the one with just the red letters. This is called the NASA worm. And this one is kind of cool because it has just recently come back as a big logo for NASA. And it's going to be on some rockets that are going up pretty soon. You've probably seen me wear a shirt with that as well. So you got to know who NASA is. That's the government group that is in charge of space here in America. Well, back in the 50s, there was something called a space race between the United States and the Soviet Union, which is where Russia is today. So in the year 1961, again, my parents were older kids, there was a man named Yuri Gagarin who was the very first human on the whole planet Earth to get inside a rocket and be shot off into space. Okay, that's the actual rocket that he went up in. And he was in this very tippy top little part where the cone is. That's the capsule of the rocket. He was only up there for about an hour and then he came back to Earth and he was the first person to do it successfully. Well, the next month, guess what? The United States, we put a man in space. We had the astronaut Alan Shepard, who we put in a rocket and we sent him up into space. And he spent about 45 minutes and then he came back to Earth. So once the Soviet Union and the United States had sent astronauts and cosmonauts to space for the first time, they really got excited about the space program, and those governments started putting lots of money into it to help it grow. So, ever since then, we have had lots and lots of rockets to help get people to space. So, here in the United States, in the 1960s, from 1961 to 1963, there were some rockets that were sent up in what was called the Mercury space program. So, you can see there several different Mercury rockets that actually took Americans to space. Then from 1964 to 1966, we started the Gemini program here in the United States. And all of those rockets that you see were missions that took humans to space. Lots of trips. Then, whenever we got to 1967 into 1972, the Apollo rockets were used. And so each time that we went through these rocket programs, they got bigger, they got more powerful. And by the time we got to these Apollo rockets, guess what? Apollo 11, this one right here, is the one that put the first human at all on the moon. And he happened to be an American. Okay. Now, moving on, our rocket programs ended, and then in 1981, when I was only 3 years old, something started called the Space Shuttle program here in the United States. And so, what that means is you've got this big orange gas tank or fuel tank, and these rockets on the sides that help to boost this shuttle up into space. And once it got up there, these boosters in the tank fell off and came back to the ocean, and just the shuttle was able to go up into space and orbit the Earth, and they could conduct science experiments and things like that. Then it would fly back to Earth, kind of like an airplane, and it would land on some of our actual airports right here. See that parachute? That is on there to slow down the shuttle. Well, all the way through up until we had the space shuttle, it was always men that were able to go to space from the United States. But in 1983, the United States sent our first woman to space, and her name was Sally Ride, and it was a big, big deal. So, girls, you can go to space. And I hope that you will because she was the first for us and it laid the path for lots of other women to become astronauts and travel to space. In 2011, which was before you guys were born, the very last space shuttle flight happened. And after that, we haven't sent any more Americans to space from the United States. Now, we have astronauts that we have sent to the International Space Station, but we actually put them on rockets in Russia and send them up that way. So it has been 9 years since we sent any Americans from the United States on our soil up to space. It's been very, very quiet. This is Cape Canaveral, which is down in Florida, and it's also known as Kennedy Space Center, part of the visiting place that you can go. But if you look, it's on the ocean, and these are all rocket launch pads lining the ocean, and not a lot's been going down on down there for years and years and years, except NASA has been working on something called the SLS or the Space Launch System. Now, look at this. This is their new project. They've gone from making space shuttles to trying to make rockets again because they want these rockets to be able to take people into deep space to places like Mars. Now, that's what the launch system looks like. This is the Orion capsule. So it's very pretty and shiny right here. You see this? Okay, this is the part that people would ride in, astronauts, if they're going to be going to space. This part of the rocket is right up here. It's this little bitty part. The rest of the rocket contains fuel, it contains engines, and it comes apart from the capsule and falls back to Earth in the oceans, and they go out and collect them and they're able to reuse them again. Only this part is what travels out into space. So NASA's been working on that, trying to get enough funding and money from the government to be able to make this happen in the future. They keep putting their date off. So in the meantime, we have private space companies that have come along, like Virgin Galactic, also Boeing, which is an airplane company. They've been making the Starliner capsule for NASA. We have Blue Origin, which is another private company, and my favorite, which is SpaceX. And remember, I showed you the launch of this rocket right here a couple years ago. This was Falcon Heavy, which was a pretty cool thing. So let's talk about SpaceX for just a minute. SpaceX has been launching rockets like the Falcon 9 right here to do things like deliver satellites to space, which help us with our TVs and our cell phones and our internet service. Okay. Um, we also use that rocket to resupply the International Space Station. So he sends those rockets up and he doesn't put people in them, but he puts supplies that are able to be sent to ISS. Things like food and water and oxygen and medicines and anything that the astronauts up there might need. SpaceX is also the private company that put Starman into space with the first launch of Falcon Heavy a couple years ago. Starman is still out there somewhere in space, orbiting around in our solar system. Well, this is exciting, cool cats. Get ready for May 27th, which is in just a couple of weeks. This right here is what's going to happen. I'm going to show you this video because it is super exciting. We are getting ready to launch our first American astronauts from Cape Canaveral in Florida in just a couple weeks. This video is going to show you what it's going to kind of look like. This hasn't happened yet, so this isn't really an animation that shows you what it should look like on May 27th. So let's see what you think. Hold tight, it got just a little hung up here. Here we go. Check out these new spacesuits.
It's launch check countdown now. Pad is clear. Go for launch. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Liftoff.
Would you like to be in that rocket right now?
Stage separation confirmed. Impact ignition.
See how the pieces are separating?
Separation confirmed.
That's the cupola window at the International Space Station. And there's the Crew Dragon getting ready to dock with the station. That's the space station. Watch how it's orbiting the Earth.
Separation visually confirmed.
And now the dragon is coming back to Earth.
Mains have been deployed.
Those parachutes help slow it down so it can land safely in the ocean. And then those ships will go pick up our people. Pretty cool, isn't it? Let me go back over here before it starts playing other things on me. All right. So cool cats, that's what we have to look forward to on May 27th is sending our first two American astronauts from American soil back to space up to the International Space Station. First time that it will happen in your lifetime, which is pretty cool. So I hope that you're going to be interested in that and want to watch it very soon. So my question is, who wants to be an astronaut? Does this seem like a job that you would like to do? I've always been interested in space ever since I was a little girl and I saw the first videos on TV of space shuttles being launched. It was the coolest thing ever. And I always made sure that I was home and would watch the space shuttle go up when it was launched. Or if it happened during the school day, our teachers always brought the TV out so that we could watch the space shuttle go up. It's a very neat thing. And one of these days, I hope I get to see a rocket be launched in person down in Florida. That's one of my goals. So, cool cats, I hope that you learned a little something about space. It's a really big topic and there's so much to learn about it, but I wanted to give you just a little introduction here to maybe get you interested in learning more. I've got some different songs and videos that I'm going to show you today, and I hope that you enjoy them on your last day of NTI work.